This episode of Skirmish Supremacy is brought to you by Reformation Brewery, the official beer of your game night. People forget that we're not the most professional. Nick, because of the fact that my brain is kind of hamburger after today, I'm going to have you do the intro.
Oh. You're going to throw that on me after you hit the record button?
Yes.
Everything.
Yes.
Thanks. All right, folks. Well, today actually marks, pretty much a special day. Tim and I have been friends on Facebook for 2 years, is what Facebook informed me of this morning.
Love you.
Oh, I love you too. Actually, the big part with that isn't just that. It's that the day before we decided, before he asked me to do the podcast, he friended me on Facebook. So that really makes the podcast 2 years old today.
Officially. We actually hit episode 102 a couple weeks ago. I guess actually this would be 2 years, 52 weeks. Yeah. So we're on 104 now. Yes, math is hard.
Math is hard. It's been a long day. So all that awesomeness, 2 years. We have Jamie Trantor from the infamous JT, and he's got Warsaw. All of a sudden, it went blank. It's the Warsaw Uprising, World War II time frame. So, Jamie, welcome.
Hey guys, thanks for having me. Really excited to talk about the Warsaw Uprising of 1944 today. We've got it on Kickstarter right now. And we funded just 2 days ago, which is really exciting for me because now we can start looking at stretch goals.
Ooh, stretch goals. Stretch goals are fun.
Yeah, I actually just noticed that as I was clicking on this a little bit earlier that you guys just funded a few days ago, and it's slowly trickling up there. So that means you get to start cracking out more of the new hotness.
Yeah, I can't help but get excited about. I was excited about the figures we were already releasing, but now my mind's going a bit kid in a toy shop sort of mind frame.
And you kicked this off on Monday, right? Or Sunday?
It's a week today. We kicked it off actually.
Oh, it's a week.
Okay. A week today. We funded after 5 days, which is pretty exciting for our first ever Kickstarter and our first ever model range. No,
definitely. That's always a good thing.
Yeah, especially we're doing it's quite a niche little topic, but it's one that we're really passionate and excited about. So
yeah. Go ahead, Nick. I'm sorry.
Well, and I was going to say, from the look of it, excuse me. So one of the things that, when I first saw it and noticed, I was like, pretty good time. The Road to Berlin for Bolt Action, released just a little while back. Good time to push it. But, then when I looked at the Kickstarter, I could see that, this has been in the works for a little bit longer than, even that may have been announced or planned, because there's a lot of historical reference and research that I was seeing in it.
Yeah, I'm a bit of a nerd for the Warsaw Uprising. I was really lucky that I was working with Warlord Games during the time that they were developing Road to Berlin. But before that, I was actually working with Rubicon Models, who actually have a Hetzer kit that, because I kept on nagging, has Warsaw Uprising markings on the decal sheet. So I guess the idea for this came probably 2 years ago, actually, around the time you guys were starting your podcast.
Oh, hey, look at that.
Which is somewhat fitting. And it's something I've wanted to do for ages. And I finally found two sculptors who were crazy enough to try and take on this little niche subject with me, which is Dennis Sanofsky and Jonathan Linares. And I also got a lot of advice from Andy Hobday, who's been on the show, right? Futsal Miniatures.
Yeah,
he has.
He kindly volunteered to help us out with casting and stuff like that, and give me a bit of advice here and there. And we decided, what, it's a niche range. Let's just go for it on Kickstarter and see what happens.
Well, so far it's looking pretty good. So I guess, hey, tell us a little bit about what the Warsaw Uprising 1944, what it was.
Okay, so the Warsaw Uprising was actually it took place in Warsaw, strangely enough, in 1944, and it was the Polish resistance attempting to liberate the city from the German occupation. So the Polish resistance knew that the Soviets were on their way, the Germans were starting to retreat westward, and they decided, with some guidance from the government in exile in Britain, to rise up and try and throw the Germans out as the Soviets were advancing. Unfortunately, the Soviets had different ideas because it's believed that Stalin wanted to undermine the government in exile because he wanted Poland to be part of the Soviet Union. And the uprising, it ultimately failed due to a lack of outside support. It went on for 63 days, and it was the largest resistance operation of World War II. What makes it particularly interesting to gamers and painters is that the forces involved look really unique because you've got this interesting mixture of civilian clothes, Polish uniforms, captured German uniforms, stuff that British Air Forces and American Air Forces were dropping in shipment containers. So you get this really cool kind of not random, but definitely not uniform force going on.
Which actually, just to hit the bolt action part, was one of the things that attracted me to the period, and I went looking, and there isn't a whole lot. I actually was buying a little bit of Soviet and German, or I bought some of those plastic boxes to try and mix and match some stuff.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, one of the things that we were really, really super keen to do is some of our figures have some of the unique items that were only present in Warsaw. So one of the SMGs that we've got is called the I'm going to butcher the Polish name, the Bliswinka, which is a lightning SMG. It was manufactured in secret factories in Poland. So we really wanted to try and get some of those iconic, more unusual items in our forces.
And nice. That is awesome, and that is one of the other things that is cool, or interesting with your range and that time period, because they manufactured a lot of this right under the Germans' nose.
Yeah, definitely. Which there's a lot of ingenuity. So like the Bliswinka is kind of cool because there's no parts that are welded together, which means that you can take it apart and hide it around your house. So that the Germans are unlikely to find it. Some of the guns that they manufactured, like the Sten guns that they manufactured in secret, they actually put British serial numbers on. Smuggled in from Britain rather than manufactured in Warsaw.
Wow. So that way it looks like all the equipment that they had, if they were caught, was basically donated or scavenged instead of like, oh yeah, we're actually manufacturing this right underneath your nose.
Exactly. You can't go looking for something if you think it was dropped in via an airplane, So,
yeah, exactly.
And some of the other weapons, such as there's a famous pistol called the Vis pistol. When Germany invaded Poland, they liked the Vis pistol so much they kept the factory open so that the Poles would make the Vis pistol for German forces. But the Poles were smuggling them out themselves to obviously equip to their underground fighters. Which one thing that some guys are always shocked by is a lot of those underground fighters were Boy Scouts.
Really?
Yeah, it's not what you expect when you hear the word Boy Scout. You think of happy little camping trips, not partisan hunting parties, But what you've got to remember is Poland was occupied for 5 years. So a lot of those scouts who were 13, 14 at the start of the occupation, by the time of the uprising, were 18, 19. And the scouts provided a hierarchy of command straight away.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I didn't think about that.
Yeah, I mean, if you read some of the old Scouting for Boy books, there's stuff like in Britain, the scouts were taught how to set up traps for German patrols if the Germans ever arrived. And I think it's mentioned in Operation Seal Arm by Bolt Action. So they're one of the most elite units in the Polish army. It's weird, but they were Boy Scouts.
That's insane.
Well, that definitely does put a twist on trying to insult someone by calling them a Boy Scout.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's some interesting units as well, such as sewer fighters. So a lot of Polish combatants would go and hide in the sewers to sneak up behind German armor, sneak up behind German patrols and stuff like that. I can't imagine crawling through the sewers to then go and fight the Germans, but people did it. And one of the things that we've tried to represent with our models as well is the presence of female fighters as well. Because a lot of the time, this hobby, people assume that it's painting tiny little men. But also, if you do a Force in Warsaw, you can paint tiny little women as well.
Right. So you actually have some named figures that are actually up in the Kickstarter currently.
Yeah, I'm really excited about those, actually. We have two. The female medic is a lady called Danuta Motas. And now she's really, really special because in the bolt action community, there's a guy called Peter Motas, and it's actually his grandmother.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, he got in touch with me about it just before the Kickstarter and was telling me about it. And I said, we want to make a female medic. And he said, well, my nan was one. And she actually got shot at one point by a Tiger tank. Shot a shell.
Oh, okay. She got shot by a Tiger tank.
Yeah, the story like that he was telling me, they believe it was a Tiger tank. They can't say with 100% certainty, but there was definitely Tiger tanks in Warsaw. She was treating a wounded fighter in an apartment block, and a tank shell shot through the window and exploded, and a table or a door went flying into her, which actually probably saved her life because it meant that the rubble was on top of the door or the table rather than on top of her. And she spent the remainder of the war in a camp and survived, and obviously started a family after the war. But we really wanted to pay homage to those brave female fighters and medics, and this gave us a great opportunity to do, because we actually used images of Danuta when sculpting the figure. And the second named character, I am really bad with. I'm from Birmingham in the UK, so I can't pronounce English, never mind Polish names. Eugenia says Lejowski, who is quite an interesting character in the sense that before the war he was an athlete, and he actually set a world record for the javelin throw. He fought in the defense of Poland at the start of the war. During the German occupation, he helped run an underground university. And during the Warsaw Uprising, he actually took over 1,000 photographs. Now, we used a lot of those photographs when we were looking for inspiration, so we thought it was a perfect way to say thank you, to pay homage to all those photographs that we've been pinching.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. So I noticed with his figure, he's got the camera, which obviously is a huge part of the history behind it all. Mm-hmm. What is the significance of the cat on his base?
Well, that's basically there's 3 iconic images of him, but my personal favorite, he has a kitten, and I think it's the Beasts of War guys put it really well. It's proof that even before the internet, we loved photographs of cute furry animals.
I mean, they're not wrong.
Yeah, exactly. It's like an early version of a cat has cheeseburger. So we've popped the cat on there. It's on the base. It's an optional extra. It's a separate piece. Personally, I can't wait to paint the cat. I'm almost as excited about the cat as I am about the figures.
Yeah, so I read that spot in the Kickstarter the other day, and I'm like, oh hell yeah, I'm painting the cat. When it's like, this is optional. I'm like, no, it's not. Who are you trying to play with?
Yeah, I think plus as well, I mean, the model has loads of uses in general, because the bolt action guys, they release rules for war photographers anyways. So that's a perfect usage. I'm going to be using it as an objective marker. Yeah, it's a model I'm really excited about. We put a lot of research in. We've actually got the camera that he's using is the same camera that he's known to have used.
Oh, really? Right. Okay.
Right, which that is awesome. And that was some of the stuff when I was looking through after, talking to you and getting the link. Again, is just all those little details with it. It was the camera. That the flamethrower.
Yeah, we maybe went a little bit overboard with the research. My missus is sick and tired of hearing about Poles in Warsaw 1944. So, every time I go, oh, that gun's this and this and this, and she's, shut up, just watch the movie.
So it hasn't ruined movies for you yet, huh?
It has. Oh no, well, part of the enjoyment of movies for me is dissecting them and saying, oh, that weapon wasn't really there.
Okay.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, we hope in the future to do some more named characters. And one in particular that I want to do is there was actually a guy called, I think it's Lieutenant John Ward from the RAF. And he's actually from Birmingham in the UK. He was shot down in France in 1941. And he was sent to a concentration camp in Poland where he escaped and eventually took part in the Warsaw Uprising.
So he was all over during the whole war.
Yeah, definitely. It's a nice bit of local history for myself. And that's one of the stretch goals that I'm going to be gunning for in the future on Facebook.
Nice. So I do got to ask this, because I'm looking at it, the K-pattern flamethrower, this was a 2-man team weapon?
It was actually a 4-man team weapon. We've gone for the 2-man because a lot of bolt action armorists have it that way.
Okay.
But we're planning on releasing another 2 figures later on, which you can add to that team to make a 4-man, or you can use them elsewhere. It's a really cool weapon, actually. It's a homemade flamethrower that was kind of a standard weapon of the Polish Home Army. The Germans were really surprised by how many flamethrowers the Poles have, because it's a very nasty weapon if you're in a built-up area.
Right. But, I'm just having images of going of somebody, just in a, state of retreat, or, at least falling back, going, where are they even coming from?
Yeah, definitely. Because the reason it was a 4-man team was actually because 3 of the guys were just carrying around spare ammunition. They weren't required to fire the weapon.
Their job was literally ammo monkeys.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Which is also one of the reasons that we went for a 2-man team is, in my head, if some of the guys were just carrying ammunition, they wouldn't actually be that close to the action.
Right.
If you're carrying a big flammable fuel tank,
you're probably not going to want to be shot at.
Exactly. You're going to be standing behind the building, not going inside it, Right.
You're going to wait for the flamethrower team to come back to you to ask for the canister.
You guys go ahead. You go in. I'll sit right here. I got your back.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The K-pattern flamethrower, it was just something we had to do to make it. It's not Warsaw 1944 without homemade flamethrowers,
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. So explain to me how this works. So one person, because I'm not familiar with this weapon, one person wears basically the backpack with the canisters, and the hose runs out the front, and then it's one person to aim?
Well, it could actually be fired by one person with the canister on his own back and the weapon in front of him. But the flamethrower team that we've created, we based off a really cool piece of artwork, a real cool archive image, where there's this guy, they look really beaten down. I believe the image was taken after a failed attack on Warsaw University, which the Germans had fortified. And it just captured that really war weariness that the guy couldn't even carry his own weapon anymore. He was that tired and defeated from the day's fighting that he needs a hand, And we like to do miniatures like this because they tell a story. Having those two figures interacting in that way instantly makes them more interesting to me because they're almost a mini diorama on their own.
Yeah, I totally see that.
And it's something we've tried to do elsewhere with one of my favorite parts of the Kickstarter, and the biggest piece is the armored car Kubus.
I was waiting to get to that one because it is awesome.
It's beautiful. It's a big chunk of resin. If you hit someone with it, if you're losing a game, it's going to hurt them,
I like how you instantly turn it into a projectile weapon.
You haven't saw me roll dice, okay? I need all the help I can get.
I understand that feeling. And the big thing with that was, once again, so Osprey provided the book for Road to Berlin, and I was reading some stuff about it, and then I went and just started reading about the Warsaw Uprising and saw an image for this vehicle and immediately started trying to search everywhere on the internet that, might have, bolt action or bolt action type, figures for one of these vehicles, because I'm like, I need one.
Yeah, I mean, it just gets cooler the more you hear about it. The name Kubus is actually the Polish name for Winnie the Pooh, which I love the idea of having a vehicle called Winnie the Pooh running around shooting at my opponent. That's just cool.
That's even better.
And basically, I was the same as you. 12 months ago, I was looking for a Kubus on the internet. Maybe a bit longer, actually. Maybe 18 months ago, I think I was still at Rubicon. I was looking for a Kubus on the internet. I couldn't find one. And my friend, Jonathan Linares, he does 3D sculpting. He's amazingly talented. And I said, dude, you've got to sculpt me one. I need one, and I need it now,
Right.
So we sculpted Kubus, and that was the first miniature we had finished. And then it kind of snowballed, and I was, Dennis, can you sculpt me a figure? Can you sculpt another figure? And now we're trying to sculpt. My ideal goal is eventually to have enough figures to fill the whole platoon, with no duplicates. Every figure we're doing, every miniature, Dennis is sculpting completely from scratch, so it's unique.
Wow. That's ambitious and awesome.
Yeah.
It's a little bit crazy, but Dennis is that sort of guy.
Those are your words, though, not mine. Ambitious and awesome.
We really wanted to capture the individuality of partisan forces. So that's kind of why we've gone for that. So there will be pieces of equipment that are shared, but they might be worn slightly differently. One of the things we were talking about earlier, which is a stretch goal, is we want to do a two-person command team.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got this great image of a female fighter in an SS smock. But the smock is so big on this female fighter, it almost looks like a dress, which is awesome,
Yeah, it definitely adds a character of like they're just grabbing whatever they can in order to, keep themselves protected from the elements while they're in a war zone.
Yeah, I mean, I've saw some unusual pictures of guys running around in shorts, which we've got a sculpted guy running around in shorts, but I just thought, but if you're running through broken glass and broken buildings, why are you wearing shorts, dude? But it looks cool. Maybe it's just to prove how badass they actually were,
Yeah, it very well could be.
Or it's really just that one friend that even when there's 6 foot of snow is still wearing shorts and a t-shirt.
Yeah, we all know
fighting
somebody like that. But yeah, I mean, there's other games that personally I want to try out some Warsaw wargaming with Chain of Command.
Okay.
From the Two Fat Laddies, because I really like the deployment rules in that for city fighting, where it's a game where you don't start in deployment zones. You actually have your deployment zones are walking around the table at the start of the game, because you can't see the opponent. It's only when it becomes visible you know what there is there. So I like that for city fighting. And a few guys are on about playing games like Operation Squad, which are really detailed skirmishes for small groups of figures, which is perfect for partisan fighting. And yeah, I mean, it's going to be fun to play. It's going to be fun to play some Road to Berlin stuff as well, definitely.
Oh yeah, and I keep mentioning it because that was just what I read that made me go, let me go look more of this up. So there are definitely a lot of other really good rule sets out there that you can use these for.
Well, what was really cool for me personally, which I'm taking as a personal victory from this Kickstarter, is when Roger Gerish, who is the author behind Road to Berlin, put an order in for a Kubus. I was like, that is cool.
That is right.
Which Roger did a really good job writing Road to Berlin, and there's I really recommend, if you are looking at our Kickstarter, checking that book out for some background information and also some paint schemes with the amazing artwork.
Yeah, because there's a couple other theaters in there as well that are really neat to read about.
Yeah, I mean, also while speaking about other theaters, there's been some really interesting ideas with our miniatures, applying them elsewhere. So we have uh, a couple of guys who have bought our figures for use in a game called A Very British Civil War, if you know that one.
I've not
Yes.
heard of. Oh, okay. I have not heard of that one.
Oh, so I stumbled on it actually through Footsore Miniatures because they have stuff for A Very British Civil War on there, and looking at that stuff, I was like, this stuff is really cool. And
Yeah,
at first, I thought it was a one-off, and then I stumbled in the Facebook group for the actual game. I haven't sat down to read the rules yet, but just kind of the premise of it and seeing all the different factions and all that just seems like it would be a very British Civil War.
yeah, definitely. I mean, one of my mates from the gaming club, Neil, he's bought them to use as workers' union in Very British Civil War, and it fits really well. Especially the Cubus looks like an improvised vehicle from pretty much any 20th century battlefield.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. It and when I saw the pictures and your rendition, there was it actually made me think of there was a guy who went totally nuts and armored a armored a bulldozer
Yeah,
and went to town, but it was a fortress. Like he ended up taking his own life, but upon examination, when they finally cracked it open and all that, they were like, they said that they had nothing in available to them to actually have taken this out.
wow, yeah. I mean, stuff like games like that, where anywhere where you're playing in 20th century Europe, the models are perfectly fitting for. An interesting one I've heard of as well is Acton Cthulhu. Some people have bought it for that game,
Okay, yeah.
which is a game set in World War II Europe where Cthulhu's coming. There's no other way to put it. Cthulhu and the old ones are coming, and some people have bought our figures to use as their characters in that game.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean they're more usable. You can also use them as a Volkssturm, which are the German militias right at the end of World War II. You can use them as partisans elsewhere, so in France and Yugoslavia and places like that. So they're a very varied bunch. Obviously, mine will be Polish, but that doesn't mean yours have to be if you're backing it.
Right.
I'm trying to think where was the other place that had partisan forces in the Road to Berlin book? Was it Czechoslovakia?
Yeah, I think Czechoslovakia is one. I think the Rubicon models Hetzer also has the decals for a Czech Hetzer.
Yeah. So, yeah, because I think it was Prague. Is where they set the fighting.
Yeah, definitely. So in Road to Berlin, you can use it there. You can also use them. Some of them will be usable as French partisans for the Armies of French and the Allies book, if you know that book from Osprey and Bolt Action. Again, Volkssturm's a perfect example. Are Volkssturm in Road to Berlin? Can't remember. I was that excited by the Polish section I didn't read on.
I think so.
Yeah, so there's definitely multiple uses for them.
Oh yes, no, there is. So I was trying to figure it out. You have one spot where it talks about the fighters, and you say you're producing 2 packs of fighters. How many fighters are in a pack?
So every time we do a pack, it'll be 4 figures. Every time we say a fighter pack.
Okay.
To begin with, the Kickstarter was originally for 2 packs. One set in military gear, which are your Boy Scouts and your elite partisans, which right at the start of the uprising raided an SS warehouse. So they have a lot of SS smocks and German helmets and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And the second pack are your guys in civilian clothing, making do with what they can find. So the first one we had sculpted is wearing a sweater vest. because we saw a picture of a dude in a really cool sweater vest and shirt combo that we just had to make a 28 mil.
I wonder how many people are going to paint that with like an Argyle pattern on it.
Oh, I'm going to share the partisan image later because it had an Argyle pattern. That's why.
That's amazing. Okay, I was just throwing it out there.
So I thought, that dude could be in Starbucks. So it stood out to me. Yeah, I mean, our stretch goals are all basically divided under the similar terms. So there'd be packs that are in SS and German gear that they've captured, and there'd be packs that are in civilian gear. And there'd be packs that's in mixed gear, which will also have some Polish stuff that was buried or hidden right at when Poland surrendered, you know?
Right. Yeah.
If you was in the Polish army and you went back to your normal life and you weren't a prisoner of war, chances are you probably hid your uniform somewhere in the house just in case, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So speaking of hiding things around the house, how did they pull that off? And, you know, obviously I'm sure people got caught, but how did they typically go about pulling that off? I know you said the guns could be disassembled and kind of hidden throughout the house. So I could kind of see that where the Germans are kicking in doors. They just see this thing and they don't even know what it is. It's just like a metal bit, but like the full uniforms and everything else. Like, how did they go about getting all the fighting gear together when they actually needed it?
So some of the interesting things was that a lot of the partisans involved in the Warsaw Uprising weren't necessarily in Warsaw at the start. They were making their way there.
Okay.
So they were hidden out in the forests around Warsaw, in the countryside. There's a guy who I can never remember his Polish name because his nickname was Tarzan, which is so much easier to remember. He led a partisan unit all the way right from the surrender of Poland all the way to the end of the war. He led a partisan unit that was actually responsible for the highest officer killing the German army by a partisan unit. And he made his way to Warsaw, but he wasn't in Warsaw at the start of the uprising, you know?
Okay.
And also a lot of the weaponry was actually, when Poland knew it was surrendering, the Polish army knew Poland was going to have to surrender. They actually buried a lot of gear. And it was dug up just before the uprising, you know?
Okay.
So some of it was unusable because it had rusted or it was falling apart, you know? But there was thousands of rifles that were dug up that when they took them apart and combined them with parts from other rifles, you know, they were perfectly usable. And there's a lot of ingenuity in some of the equipment they were using. So the Blisswinker SMG that I mentioned earlier, one of the clever things about that is it was made to be completely compatible with the MP40 from the Germans.
Really?
Yeah, so if they captured loads of MP40 magazines, they could put them in their Blisswinker and it was good to go.
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah, and they also had a lot of support from outside Poland. So the Brits, for example, were dropping in Stens and Piats during the uprising. Weapons such as I'm trying to think of what the Piat is, an iconic weapon that was dropped in. Because Britain and America, the Western Allies, really wanted to help the Polish uprising. Unfortunately, Stalin stopped a lot of, didn't give the Western Allies access to the airfields. So, but we were still dropping in items like Piats, helmets. So you get these really cool, interesting units that are even walking around in Poland wearing British helmets and equipped with British Piats.
Nice.
I think that's
quite an interesting weapon as well. It's quite cool, just a spring-loaded bazooka, basically.
A spring-loaded bazooka.
Yeah, I've saw some like veterans speaking about they've shot Piats at stuff, and there was one guy in Normandy who said the Piat was probably more of a danger to himself than to the Tiger tank he was trying to shoot at, because of the limited range and the weird sort of angle that it shot out at because of the spring. But it's kind of cool, you know.
And he's like, and I fired hundreds of rounds.
Yeah, I think he was actually saying he fired 5 rounds at this. He says it was a German Tiger tank, but you know, a lot of veterans say Tiger tank because that was their nickname for all German vehicles.
Right.
And he was saying that he shot 5 times and he hit at least 4 of the times and it just didn't do anything. And the 5th time it bounced back and broke his own glasses. So
Wait, let me get this straight. He basically fired a spring-loaded rocket that bounced off the tank, came back, and hit him in the face.
Yeah, it's quite. The P8 is quite famous for being not particularly good. Especially at long range, you know. I mean, in Warsaw, the P8 was actually quite successful because of the fact that it's a built-up area. You can get nice and close before you shoot. But,
right.
You know, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I knew what the Piat was, but you know I just looked up the Wikipedia page for it again, and as it loaded, just as you said, you know, it wasn't very good. The picture on it it's like this is the one in, you know, some museum, and it looks bent. You know, but you know, looks like it's in excellent shape, except for there's just a really weird bend to it.
Yeah,
it's like. This was never used. This came off the production line and the war ended. And all I can think of is, I'm glad no one got that one.
Yeah, I mean, it's a cool iconic weapon. I mean, we've actually given one away in the Kubus pack so that you can have a P-out on top of Kubus if you want it.
Nice.
Because the on top of Kubus there's a gun shield that it's debated whether a P-out was ever shot from it, but it was designed to house a P-out. You know, whether they actually used it is another story. Because if you've not got much faith in a weapon, you're probably not going to use it.
Well, I was going to say, like, if it takes 4 hits to essentially take out a Tiger tank, or at least do something to it, and the 5th one bounces back in your face, the last thing you want to do is have one of these shots just like dud out and fall directly on top of the vehicle that you're sitting in.
But I mean, there's some even crazier weapons. One thing I'm really keen to make is I've got an image of a homemade mortar that is basically just a piece of tubing with a spring. And I think I really want to make one of them. I want a mortar team eventually. But I mean, there's some good weapons as well, such as one of our SMG fighters is going to be armed with the Thompson. The 1928, you know, the gangster Thompson from Chicago. There's some images of fighters with Thompsons, and I was thinking, how the hell did they end up all the way over there in Poland? But, you know, they did, so it's a great example. It's the way I would explain Polish forces in Warsaw to people who are playing bolt action is it's a way of having a little bit of everything.
Yep, that was, you know, like, the more I read the history about it, the more I was disappointed that there wasn't a range that really actually captured that, for one. Mm-hmm. And then, you know, just looking at all the, you know, stuff, you know, the homemade guns, the guns that they had shipped in from, you know, all over the place, you know, or dropped in.
I mean, one other thing that I meant to mention, and I always forget, I forgot to mention it on the podcast I was on the other day, is they also bought guns off the Germans and Italian forces that were retreating.
Oh, they bought the guns off them. Hey, we know you're not using these anymore. Here's some money, and why don't you just give us your weapons?
If you was a German dude who'd been on the front in Russia, you were finally making your way towards home, you were war weary.
Oh yeah, you didn't care.
Someone offered you a few quid and a bottle of vodka for your MP40 that you're probably going to lose anyways, or it's busted up, or it belonged to a comrade who's no longer using it. They used to sell them all the time, which is why you get examples of some Italian weapons and some German weapons in Polish forces as well.
Yeah, and that's also where they got some of their equipment, not just raiding the Germans, some of the clothing and helmets and stuff like that, but they would buy those from them too.
Yeah, there was a massive black market for things like this, you know. And there was also partisan forces that were equipped by Russia over in the east. They decided to come west to help out in the Warsaw Uprising because they felt they had a duty to Warsaw as it's Poland's capital, you know.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that was what drew me to the Polish forces personally. Was I'm one of these people. I have a really short attention span when I'm painting, so I want to be able to paint 10 different schemes in one army so I don't get bored.
Yeah, right. I definitely like the idea that everybody's going to be different because painting the same figure over and over sucks.
Yeah. Well, so the other thing I was going to mention with this too is, you know, just to kind of go back to it all, with all the different gear and things like that they took, I'm just kind of doing the math in my head. And if you were to try to take like your typical multi-part bolt action kits and kit bash a force from the Warsaw Uprising, that would get very expensive very quickly.
Yeah, I mean, there are people who have done that. I don't know if you guys, I'm a big fan of the Bolt Action Alliance on Facebook.
I am not actually in that group.
Oh, it's a Facebook page. They used to have a podcast, I believe. They're associated with whatwouldpattondo.com, if you know them. And there's a guy on there called Kieran who's actually a member of my club, who he's kit bashed the start of his force because he couldn't wait for my Kickstarter apparently. He's combined the plastic SS kits with some plastic British weapon sprues and some metal polish, and it's a lot of work, but it's very rewarding, especially if you combine that with our figures, I believe. You know what I mean? You can have a very varied large force quite quickly. And one of the things that I'm really keen to push, because it's a very common misconception, you can still have vehicles, A lot of people are always assuming, partisan forces, I can't have a tank. But the Poles in Warsaw, they had Kubus, which obviously we're producing. They had a Hector, which Rubicon Models makes the decals for. They had 2 Panther tanks, which they captured during the uprising. They had a BA-20 armored car, and they had trucks in quite a large supply because there were civilian trucks as well,
Right.
I've got a great image of a truck that was converted into a field ambulance, and it was actually a cake delivery van before the war.
That's amazing.
And they also had a Tiger tank for about an hour. They captured a Tiger tank, and apparently the young driver who was using it, he was so enthusiastic about having a Tiger tank, he crashed it and broke part of the engine. So
Still, they can claim it. That's the part that matters. They had a Tiger tank.
Yeah, I can use a Tiger tank. How long is a game of bolt action? It's about an hour and a half.
Right, so you're perfect. Yeah, just as long as you wreck it by the end of the game, you're fine.
The way I play, it is definitely going to end the game wrecked.
That's amazing.
Yeah, really good. Really, really excited.
Yeah, so I mean, you guys are off to a great start. You just funded, like you said, a few days ago. You still got 21 days to go in this campaign, so you still got quite a bit of time to knock out more things. So let me ask you, just as far as like the depth of this particular Kickstarter, how many stretch goals do you think you'll hit, or like how many stretch goals do you think that you'll produce as a possibility of hitting?
We will do a stretch goal, which will be a 4-figure pack every £1,200.
Wow. Okay.
Because this is my passion project. Yeah, this is the project I've always wanted to do. So every £1,200, we will produce another 4-figure pack. Whether the first 4 of those packs will be free with the people who pledge £70. Some of those packs might be purchasable add-ons, but it's literally a case of the more backers we get, the more we can produce. I don't want to stop. I want to do mortar teams. I want to do more flamethrower teams. I want to do machine gun teams. I want to do more poses. It just depends on how much people out there want it to happen.
Right. Totally makes sense.
Yeah, because you can never have enough toy soldiers.
Never.
I keep telling my wife that. She just keeps looking at me weird. Every time I say that, she's like, no, I think that's a lie.
That's one of the great things about having an office space where I can hide it. An office that's not in the house, When she visits, I have to put a tablecloth over all the boxes of figures, It's a table, honestly, though. But yeah.
That's amazing. So you plan on definitely knocking some extra stuff out there. And honestly, with the way that the Kickstarter is projecting to go right now, yeah, you're definitely going to hit some stretch goals in there without a doubt.
Yeah, I'm really hoping we hit at least a couple. I'm going to show a piece of artwork tomorrow. That me and Dennis Dennis was doodling. I was mostly just saying I want this, and this for a command team that we're planning, which will be the second stretch goal of the campaign. Because we also want to make all the different options that you can have in your army. So I really want to make a sniper team as well, because sniper teams in bolt action are amazing. Every army list I ever have has a sniper team, so I really need one in miniature. We want to do more. We started off, the first 2 packs are completely equipped with SMGs. And the reason for that was the way I saw those first 2 packs they're the guys that are going around in Cubus. And they were equipped heavily with SMGs because they were getting up close and personal.
Right. They jump out and they just want to start kind of spraying and praying as quickly as possible.
Yeah, exactly. You know, these are the close quarter guys that were assaulting buildings outside of Cubus. They're an elite force. And also the iconic SMGs, like the homemade one I mentioned earlier, the Blisswinker, we really wanted to sculpt them quickly because nobody else does them in 28mm. You know, you can get a Kar 98 rifle from tons of different manufacturers, but at the moment you can't get a Blisswinker from anyone, you know? So
right.
We wanted to give gamers that option. What we've actually done with the rifles, which is something I'm really proud of, with all the guns, and I want to mention, is Jonathan Linares sculpted them all for us digitally, which means that we have masters, and it means that the scaling is consistent with every figure. So you don't suddenly get a figure with a massive machine gun compared to his buddy, you know?
Right. That makes sense. Did you have any problem with the scaling of like weapon parts getting to be a little too small for their own good?
Scaling was something kind of interesting to me. I got a lot of feedback and tips from people like Andy at Futsal, Stu from Great Escape Games, who does a range of really nice Romanians. If you make a rifle 156, which is what most people assume 28mm is, it quickly becomes less than a millimeter wide.
Right.
You know, you're not going to be able to cast that, never mind paint it. So there's an element of trial and error in that. But we've been really lucky in that our 3D printer that we're using is Rubicon Models. And Edwin from Rubicon Models has given us, if I sent him a rifle originally and he went, dude, this is too small. You know, you've got to make it at least twice the size. So, it's a learning curve for me as it's my first range.
Right.
But luckily the community and the other companies in the industry are so helpful that it's doable, you know?
Oh yeah, it makes perfect sense. Yeah, that's the one thing that I've definitely found, you know, with Nick and I talking to so many of the, I don't want to call them the smaller, but the independent companies out there, they're all willing to work together, you know, in so many ways. And there's been a lot of times that we've even introduced people to other people in order to get better results. And it seems that everybody just does better because of it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think everyone who works in this industry, they love miniatures themselves. So it's not a bad thing for there to be more miniatures to buy, you know?
Right, exactly.
I really want to give a shout out to, I don't know if you've had him on here before, Rob from Historical Games. He makes a game called Panzerfaust, which is a weird World War II game where they're like orcs and dwarfs and stuff like that.
Go on.
But he is a pro when it comes to like 3D printing and scaling and stuff, and he answered a ton of my questions. And he also answered a ton of my questions about the Kickstarter platform. So, and so did Annie from the Dice Bag Lady from Bad Squiddo Games. She answered a ton of questions about Kickstarter for me, and I just really want to say thank you, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. We actually had her on a few weeks ago, and I know that, did it just end, Nick? I haven't had a chance to check it today. I got kind of busy at work, but...
It ended yesterday.
Okay. Yeah, and she came out with the Shield Maidens line, which is primarily for Saga. Came out swinging and just killed it.
Oh, man, I think £36,000, something like that, it finished on.
Yeah, it was great. But, I mean, she had lots of awesome stuff in there as well, so...
Yeah, I mean, she works with some really talented sculptors. I picked up a few things for myself from that, which was naughty of me when I'm about to launch my own Kickstarter, but, you know.
I call it market research.
Yeah, it's temptation.
Tax write-off.
Yeah, that's how I justified it to myself.
Yes. Now let's just hope that the IRS doesn't catch on to what I just said. So, yeah, we're just going to go ahead and scratch that part of the episode. But, yeah, it's... Yeah, it's definitely cool seeing a lot of the smaller companies come together. And I know in the UK it's a little bit easier for you guys just because of the fact that, you know, you're all so much closer together. Yeah. Where we've had actually a lot of people from Europe come to America because they think of Europe as a whole, you know, and it's like, oh, well, I can ride a train to France. And we're like, yeah, that's like crossing a state. That's adorable. So like when we think about like working with other people, even in the United States, and like the fact we're passing through, I mean, if I were to work with somebody in California, that's 3 different time zones.
Yeah. I mean, definitely within the UK, small companies help each other out, but also, like you say, Europe as a whole. Thomas Stoessa from Stoessa's Heroes, he gave me lots of advice. Dennis Schumacher from Here 46, who has this really amazing, he's had some amazing Kickstarters and he's got some amazing ranges. It was originally him that went, I kept going to him, I really want to do Poles, I really wanted to be a Polish ranger. He went, well, why don't you do it? You know, there's people out there who help, so why don't you give it a go and see what happens? It's super cool, especially if you go to wargaming shows and everybody knows everybody, you know?
Yeah, very much so.
And if you ever go to Nottingham, you're closer to a wargaming shop in every direction, you know, a wargaming company in every direction if you're in Nottingham.
Right. Actually, it was funny when we had Joe Sala from Lucid Eye on. We mentioned something about Andy Hobday or, you know, Footsore, and he's like, yeah, they're, you know, 3 doors down from us in the same plaza and all that. It's like, well, that is kind of random.
Yeah, I think if I'm right, from Lucid Eye, you've got Steve Sala, the sculptor.
Yep.
He did like most of the Gangs of Rome range. And he's a talented sculptor as well, man. That Lucid Eye range is the Red Book of the Elven King.
Oh, man.
Some figures, man.
We've been drooling over that ever since he started showing pictures.
Yeah, probably tomorrow. I'm going to buy myself my birthday present, which is going to be everything he has in the Red Book of the... I mean, you know, it's only 4 packs, but, you know...
Is that your birthday present or the podcast's birthday present?
My birthday present.
Yeah, his personal birthday present.
Yeah, because tomorrow's my birthday, so...
happy birthday, man.
Yes, and when this episode goes live on Monday, I want everybody out there, listeners, to wish Nick a happy late birthday.
Yeah, because it'll already be best.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Nice. So you've got 21 more days to this bad boy. And then obviously you're looking at just absolutely crushing this. And actually, as we've been sitting here, I kind of popped over to the Kickstarter page. You just got another backer and got another, well, it's converting over to US dollars. So it looks like you just got another couple $100. So
oh, wow.
Yep. It's gradually creeping up there.
Maybe you guys were a good luck charm. But actually, I think I'm hoping tentatively that we hit the first stretch goal this week. Because maybe by the time this podcast is out, even because we are dangerously close now, you know.
Yeah, actually, I was sitting here and you were talking about, you know, starting to unlock the stretch goals right at the beginning of the podcast, and I was looking and I'm like, wait, you haven't opened them yet, or you haven't, and it took me a minute to, you know, do the converting to go, oh, it's so close.
Yeah, it's in sight now. The first stretch goal is actually a pack of rifle equipped fighters with a LMG, probably an MG34, because the MG34 is cool, you know. It's a nice, cool, big gun.
And you know what? I think that's the other part of this whole range that I, you know, and you that I'm really liking with this is you're like, it was there and it was cool. That's first.
Yeah, it's like when we originally started, I was speaking to Dennis. I was speaking to Dennis earlier today, actually, about what I want to do in the future. And I was like, I want to make this gun. I want this gun. I want this one next. And can you do this dude wearing this hat? Because this hat's really cool. You slow down, Jamie. You know,
that's you just tell him no, and you just keep talking.
Yeah. I must be really annoying because I send him these pictures at like 1 a.m. in the morning of look how cool this photograph is. It was taken on this street in Warsaw, you know.
Yeah, and he's like, that's great. I'll get back to you when it's not vampire hours.
Yeah, dude, I'm asleep, man. Go to bed. No, I mean, that's one of the things. One of the things that I've really enjoyed as well is a lot of our backers actually get in touch. So some of the people who have backed the Kickstarter have got in touch and have gone, "Oh, have you saw this photograph? Oh, this photograph's great. Where I saw this at a museum. I don't know if you saw it." And we actually had Terrain for Games, which is a Polish company that make really great scenery. They sent me like 3 books, man, from Poland that have images in that I can't find anywhere on the internet.
Wow.
That is amazing.
That was really cool. And one of my mates, Steve Cooper, there was a book that I was after for like years, man. It was a couple of £100. It went out of publication in the 80s. He found it in a charity shop for like £2. How crazy is that? He's got a big Polish community that lives nearby him. He found it in the British Heart Foundation shop for like £2. That's awesome, and it's been invaluable, you know?
Yeah, it is.
Wow. Yeah, so far so good. You obviously you have a lot of passion to this project. This is something that I can definitely tell talking to you. You've wanted this for a while.
It was a bit scary when we clicked launch on Kickstarter, especially because me being me, I messed up and launched it a day early. Because I was just clicking around. Oh, what happens if I click that button? And then suddenly it was live. And,
like,
it was because it's kind of a niche project, which sometimes that can go for you in the sense that people who are into it are really into it. But then sometimes it can also go against you because sometimes it might be so niche that there's not a market for it. But I think we've proven so far that there is definitely a market for these niche parts of World War II, you know? World War II is such a massive... Obviously, no one can produce everything. But if you're interested in something, you can if you want to.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. I mean, there is so many different aspects and fronts and everything else to that war in particular. And a lot of it just has to do with the fact that we have insane amount of records from that war that, even if somebody were to come out and go crazy and say, we're going to produce every single thing that there is for World War II, I can't even imagine what their SKU count would be.
Yeah, that would take a very long time. I mean, I'm still amazed every now and again because I'm one of the admins on the Bolt Action Facebook group. Some of the pictures that people find of really weird vehicles. You know, like this is one of the examples I can think of is there's a Churchill that was kicking around in Italy that had a Panzer III coupler. No idea why, but this dude had converted it and it looked absolutely beautiful. You know.
Wow, that's.
Because he could.
Yeah, that's really about it. Awesome. So, Jamie, we actually do have to wrap this episode up. I could keep talking about this all night because honestly, there's not a lot for me that I know about World War II. Typically about War of the Roses period is where my history starts to stop. I don't know what it is about guns. I like them personally, but like for history, I never really got into that aspect of it. But where can everybody find you? Like Instagram, Facebook, Twitter?
So we have Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Facebook is where I'm most active. And we also have a website, which is just infamousjt.com.
Excellent. Yeah, we'll definitely include all that in the show notes so people can get a hold of you. And of course, we'll be posting up everything about the Kickstarter in the show notes of the episode as well to make sure that people head over there and back this bad boy while it's still alive.
Thanks very much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Nick, is there anything else you want to throw in there real quick before we head out?
Thanks for coming on. And yeah, I had a list. I forgot it.
Oh, okay, perfect. So yeah, we'll just we'll mention it later at some other time.
The next podcast that we record that I remember it or something like that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Professionals. Strict professionals. Well, folks, that's going to wrap up this episode of Skirmish Supremacy. We will see you next time.
Bah!
Thanks for listening to another episode of Skirmish Supremacy. To see more of the antics that Nick and I do, you can check us out on Facebook at Skirmish Supremacy. We also have Twitter, which we can be reached at Skirmish Supreme, because apparently Skirmish Supremacy does not fit in Twitter. And if you want to email us directly, you can reach us at tim@skirmishsupremacy.com or nick@skirmishsupremacy.com. Thanks for listening.